And a reminder of just like, you know what? It's a gift at times to have plan, and it's a gift also to let plans just gracefully navigate itself. And so plan for the unexpected has been like the life lesson I've carried on. And so I'm still an extensive planner, but now I also extensively plan for flexibility. And I think that has helped me be more grounded, at ease, and again, noticing skill to notice that, you know what, if I could now appreciate all these different things and hence, learn more things. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story because I don't empathize with you because I'm not a planner. Success is not achievable alone. We all have a story of a person who took a risk, someone who imagined a life greater than what we could, someone who stood in the gap. This show shares those someones, those unsung heroes who pushed us when we could have settled for what is. I'm Derrin Slack, and this is Stood in the Gap, the show that focuses on the who, not the how, behind a leader's success. Monica Kang, I am so excited to share with you today and to be in your presence. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. You are someone I met during the pandemic,
Yes.
and and you were doing so many things around that time to really help keep people engaged from
Thank you.
all over the country. No, pause. All over the world, and 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 while we were prepping, I said that you are someone that I feel so connected to, even though we haven't met in person. So
I know. And I think that's been one of the humbling things during the pandemic of just like meeting real new friends. And I think I've been wanting to cherish that. So mutual.
yeah, good. Well, kind of, can you give a brief intro into like what you were doing in that time? Like, why did we even meet, and why did you bring us together to do what you were doing?
Well, I think as we were all navigating the pandemic, as you recall, everyone was, just really missing the connectivity and feeling alone. And I think this goes back to the root of like, I think you know, what makes who I am now as a person and like a part of the big part of the identity. And I think having been throughout life of all different careers and jobs and locations and different communities, I've always felt like both being what it's like to be included and excluded. And so I was just trying to find that connectivity both for myself and if there's something small that I can help bridge the gap, whether it's through creative content, inspiration, resources, tools, but most importantly, just to remind ourselves that, hey, we'll get through this like challenge. We might not know what tomorrow looks like, but at least today we are being reminded that you're not alone. And I think it was something I both needed, and I was glad that I could help a few more people. And through that, we get to meet new friends, which is a win-win for
That's
all.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Yeah, and you're such a powerful woman, and your impact rings all over the place. And
Oh,
so,
thank you. Thank you.
we want to get to know a bit more about you, and to kind of kick us off to start with that, I always start with every guest with this game, this quick, fun game called This or That.
Okay.
So, how the game works is I will give you two options and ask you a series of questions. It'll be this or that, and you choose quick and
Okay.
rapid fire. All
Okay.
right.
Haven't
And
done
so
this before. It's going to be new. I don't
well,
know
let's
what's
have
going to be
fun
asked.
with it.
I might learn
It'll be
something new about
fast.
myself.
Well, let's go. I'm really excited for us to get to know you a little bit. So, are you ready?
Ready?
You ready? All right. PayPal or Venmo?
Venmo.
Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Night or morning?
Morning. Definitely morning.
Rich and famous or rich and unknown?
Oh, rich and unknown. So much easier with
Mhm.
life.
Agreed. Passenger or driver?
uh, Depends, actually.
Okay. Depends on what?
Is that going to be against the rule?
It's against the rules, but I'll pause and you answer. Like, it depends on what?
Depends on what the context is. Sometimes it's nice to be the driver, but sometimes it's nice to just be the passenger. And I think it's important to appreciate both. So I
Okay.
would say half and half, actually.
Good. Art museum or history museum?
I love both, but if I have to choose one, art museum.
Car or bike?
Mm, walk. I'm totally breaking this
You're
for
in the
work.
DC area, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, so I
Lots of
get that.
walking.
That's fine. Train or airplane?
I guess depends on distance, but yes, plane probably more often.
Owe money or owe a favor?
Favor.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Be embarrassed or be afraid?
Uh, be embarrassed, be afraid. That sounds really hard. I think you probably want neither. um, I'm not really sure. I think again, this is more of a context thing. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
important to know that you're. I guess sometimes it's yeah. I guess if I have to choose, I'd rather be afraid because it's being more aware of like why I'm being aware and scared,
sure.
and being aware
Arrogant,
of what you feel comfortable. Yeah,
right. Guacamole or salsa?
guac.
A store where every item is free or a restaurant where every dish is calorie free?
You can't have a good meal with that's calorie free.
I
Is how I
completely agree.
feel. So I feel like the first one because the second one just seems so unrealistic. I want something more realistic.
Loud neighbors or nosy neighbors?
Neither, because
If
I
you had to
can't sleep
choose,
if they're loud.
I would prefer nosy neighbors
Yeah.
because then they would be able to like kind of have a watchdog approach to my stuff and to
Uh,
my things.
I
So
don't
I would
know.
want
I
a
like the
nosy neighbor.
privacy. Going back to the
Okay,
famous but unknown under the radar.
fair enough. Fair, it's fair game. And so my last question for you is: babies dressed as animals or animals dressed as humans?
They both sound really bad, but maybe the first one at least, because that could look cute, but I think it's not good for the animals to be dressed as humans.
Yeah. And do you have any fur babies, Monica?
No, but I do appreciate it. I enjoy admiring, but I don't think I could
Yeah.
take responsibility. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not one to have any animals or anything. I'm kind of scared of little critters, to be honest with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have two kids, and so I think that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. They will keep you
So,
busy.
so thanks for playing with me, Monica. I really appreciate that.
Mhm.
It's good to get to know you a
Of
little bit
course. Yeah.
and know how
Thanks for
thoughtful
asking.
you are. You're a thinker, it seems.
It's already
And
hinting
very,
in the conversation.
yeah. So I want to start our conversation today and the meat of our conversation with every question I ask every guest. And that is a question that's centered around the 6 to 10 words that change your life. And so if you're new to our show, you know that the words that changed my life and the reason why I started this podcast is
Mm.
I'm not giving up on you. And those words just really impacted me deeply because someone stood in the gap for me. And the more that I started to share my story, the more I started to learn that a lot of leaders, if they had any level of success, have had a moment that they had to show the world where they were, or who they were, rather. They had to show the world who they were. And in my moment, I felt like giving up. And someone was like, Derrin, you ain't giving up because I'm not giving up on you. And so I'm going to ask you this question to start off. What 6 to 10 words changed your life, Monica, and what was happening and what was going on behind the scenes?
I love that. I think for me, it was this is not your fault. What happened was this was in one of my previous jobs before I started my business at Innovators Box, and I was already feeling a bit underappreciated, especially having after done my master's degree and studied and worked all the unpaid interns and all of that. I felt like I should be doing more, but yet I was still pretty much junior. Title wise, not junior, but I felt like I could be doing more. Why am I only this type of work? Lots of project management, but project management and event management can kind of, be underappreciated because it's like behind the scene, it's like, serving. And on the thick of that, what happened was in one of these business trips, my client's guest was upset about something and in the middle of the preparation started literally yelling at me in front of my face, in front of everyone. And I was terrified, one, just like how that treatment was, but also like how embarrassed I felt, and just all these different mixed emotions of like, this is not the treatment I ever envisioned, or what's going on, like what did I do, like I thought I did everything. And I was really shaken and almost in tears, and just put together, and I just said yes, and I just moved out. But I didn't know what to do. And so as I was walking back to my room, just really still shaken and processing what happened, my client happened to notice me, and he was also in that room. I didn't realize he was in that room because there was just so many people, but he just said, "Hey, do you have a moment?" And I'm already terrified, so like I thought he was going to vent even more. And he basically said, like, "Do you want to take a moment to sit down?" I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Sounds scary." And then he basically said, like, "Monica, it's not your fault. I saw what happened. That guy was probably being angry at something else, and just no matter what happened, that is not how anybody should be treated. And I just want to say, I'm sorry that's how this person treated you. And you shouldn't feel and to make you feel this way." And I just started breaking down in front of my client because I just so appreciated, one, that not only did he catch that moment, but he took the time to actually check in with me, because at that time in the client relationship that I had, I felt like, oh, the client's the king, you can't say anything, like kind of like being more careful. And for me to feel like here he was coming to me apologizing on behalf of their guest, and saying that it's not my fault, it just really brought me down in being seen as a person, and taught me the reminder that, fortunately, there are both sides of the spectrum. While there are moments where we might not feel seen or underappreciated, there are people out there who will. And it's just a matter of time where we constantly spend more time and effort finding those people or fostering those places. And it really taught me the reminder of how even that one statement just made the difference of me now finding the courage again to step back up, fixing everything, being okay. Long story short, the guy also did come back and apologize. "Sorry, I shouldn't have snapped at you that, but like, it was only possible for me to step back up with courage because I felt like somebody got my back, from somebody I didn't expect." And it made the rest of the trip more kind of seen, appreciated, and kind of, they took the time to keep coming up like, "Thank you, Monica, for doing this. Thank you." And it just really taught me like how powerful a word is, both to hurt you and to empower you. And I think it got me into the curiosity of like, how do we be more mindful? How can I also be more thoughtful and intentional with others, but also not hurting others by accidentally in my own world thinking about something and blurting out something that I might regret. So that's, I guess, one incident, yeah, a long time ago that has happened, that is coming up to be reminded that how small moments make a big difference.
That's right. Yeah, and that's such a poignant story because it's so funny how when other people stand for us, it encourages us to stand for
Yeah.
ourselves. And it doesn't take much, as you've just
Yeah.
shared, to really see someone as a person and as a human being and mattering like we
Mm-hmm.
matter. And the implications of that. I read this book that really changed my life. It's called Leadership and
Mm.
Self-Deception. And I've talked about it on the show before, but it's all about the difference between seeing someone as an object or seeing someone as a person. And when you see someone as an object, you might treat them like an irrelevancy that you ignore or an obstacle you blame. or even a vehicle that you use. When you see someone as a human, it really sparks innovation, collaboration, and really it it's really a gateway for relationships and deep relationships. And so for you, Monica, like you're an awesome leader,
Yeah.
and I'm curious as to what the story behind Innovators Box is. Like you started this awesome company, and I just think our listeners should know like what prompted you to start this company.
Well, in a way, it's, kind
Talk
of,
to us
yeah,
about
kind
that.
of related to, kind of the journey of being seen and, what it was like to be not seen. As I mentioned, I briefly hinted I was in a very different work before. I was in government, international affairs, government contracting, specialized in nuclear weapon security. And so diplomacy and all of that was kind of my jazz. And I loved it, but I felt very stuck. And as I mentioned, are also underappreciated. And while I had moments of appreciation, I just felt still, something's like off. And I got to the point of being extremely depressed. And I don't know if it's okay for me to share also, because some people might be triggered by the word, but even suicidal, because it was very stressful to feel like, is this really it? Like I've worked so hard
Yep, you share.
to be at that point, and that got me, really feeling lost. And I think one step of courage that really got me the tipping point was, one day I was going to work, another day feeling like miserable, crying, kind of putting myself down, and realize, you know what, it's more embarrassing to cry in the bus where you keep seeing the same people in the commute. Let me just walk to work. And that one step of random curiosity and courage ended up sparking so many curiosity, because now if you walk to work instead of going taking the bus, you end up noticing more things around you. You notice the buildings, you notice like where there's traffic, where the traffic light is, why there's also a long line in that bakery, or like how it smells, like why is that under construction, how long the path is, like what the weather condition. And by the time I got back to the office, I was just now so curious. I brought that energy. Everything was exactly the same except me. And I just felt so empowered, inspired, couldn't wait to get to work, couldn't wait to do these things. And people started noticing, like, well, something's going on. Like, why are you happier than before? And that's where I realized, I don't know what, but I feel like I found something really powerful, which was like really rekindling my mindset, creativity, and owning that myself and my voice, and not letting others define it. And that hence led to the journey of recognizing, really redefining what creativity, innovation is, but more importantly, in the workplace where we talk about culture, leadership, and yet so much of it is kind of, to your comment about more like object and kind of, strategy that seems very technical but not really human centric. And so as I navigated my journey for my own happiness to get out of my slump moment, helped me realize, well, if I can help at least one more person out there who might be having a really tough day, tough month, tough year, then that would mean the difference, because I found the courage from all these other resources, but still felt the gap, that it wasn't as practical, usable, or relatable for somebody like me who was not in traditional arts, or who didn't have these elitist access. And I just wanted to make this accessible, relatable, and fun as possible. And that led to the journey of how can I make this cultural leadership development that is so crucial to this people experience in the workplace fun, relatable, and practical. And that's where I got to grow my niche and build the company that it is today. But started with that very humble journey of just want to walk to work maybe, and realizing how powerful that was.
Wow. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, we don't. There's lots to talk about culture right now, and about especially in the midst of coming out of
Yeah.
COVID and just in the wake of that. And it's just, what do you like? How do you define culture? Like, what does it mean to you with your creative mind and everything? Like, how do you define culture? What makes a good culture?
Good culture is where everyone, no matter who they are, where they're from, feels seen, appreciated as who they fully are, and can be themselves at work as they are at home. And that is built organically. It's not a flashy marketing tagline or a slogan. It's built by every single individual in the company. It's felt in the interaction. It's felt in the meetings. It felt in the workflow processes of how it makes it accessible and inclusive for everyone. It's seen in the way you recruit people to show that we are targeting everyone. And it's seen also in the way of how you onboard to the moment you step into any projects, of how people treat you or how you feel you can speak up or show and share something, how you dress to work, how you feel like you can be yourself. And I think realizing from all these different careers and jobs I had, how visibly empowering it was when I felt seen versus not. That's where it dawned on me of like, this intangible looking thing is very tangible. And just because we can't physically see it does not mean it. I mean, love is another example, right? Love, loyalty, all these values, empathy. We say that it's like hard and abstract, but it's very much a tangible thing. And I hope that as more leaders are processing and wanting to build, that they realize it starts within them first, of course, but also it's not just a retreat that solves. It's in the system, it's in the projects, and how they run it, how they run the meetings, how they train their managers, how they speak, how they don't speak. All of that speaks volumes and reaffirms, this is what our culture, this is what this company, this is what it means to be in this place, because we feel have the permission to be who we are, or we don't. And so that's kind of the layer that I think of when you
Yeah.
ask that question.
So how do people see one another? So thinking about your story and you're struggling with these mental health challenges and really doubting yourself, like how does one step outside their comfort zone to see another human being for who they are?
It's a
Like how would you speak into
Yeah,
that?
it's a really important question because, and I'm sure the listeners also are, oh, wait, these are some steps I usually do, right? We all have our different ways, and I don't think there's one magic formula to just, kind of start on the footnote, I guess, comment. But the commonality that I always see looking back, though, are it's easier for us to see other people when we first see ourselves and learn how to have a strong self awareness, and understanding. Because if we don't know what it's like to be seen and know fully who we are, then it's hard to notice things around us. Like if I know that this is what makes me happy, this is what makes me stressed, I'm noticing Monica's feeling angry because that comment's being made, and I feel like that's an ageism issue or a sexism comment. Even if that's not going, like me having that awareness makes me then more present to then think about, okay, but let me have then an open mind of self-awareness. Like, I wonder what is making this person say those things, because I know this person is usually like that. So let me take a step back and notice as a human being, maybe this person's going through extreme stress. Maybe it's because of the recent incidents. I noticed that they have been out of work. Is there a death in the family? I heard they had to go to a funeral. Maybe there's something else that's going on. Like all these things, then you kind of put into perspective instead of being reactive. But it first starts with, we have to see ourselves first and know how to then have the heart and capacity then to say, okay, I'm seeing what's going on, and let me now notice what else could be going on in the other person, because we are human beings, which is AKA messy. It's not like black and white. And so I think that part's key. And of course, as you notice, that noticing skill, I think, is so key. And I know some people then say the premise of like, well, I'm not always the best communicator, or like, I don't really know how to empathize, or like, I want to, but I don't want to be, I feel like sometimes I have too much empathy, then I drain myself, or sometimes I don't. Start with where you are is part of the gift. Again, this is why the self-awareness and knowing who you are is first key. But then when you start with where you can, let's say your way of expressing is not through words. Maybe the way you show up, it's going back to the different love languages for great reference to think about how we communicate all differently expressing. But maybe the way how you show up is acts of service. It's like, I might not be, maybe I might not be the person who's like going to be saying like, how are you doing? But maybe I'll be the one who I noticed that colleague who's like really stressed out, stop by their cubicle and say, you know what? Can I help you with that task? let me take care of this. I know you have to get back home early because you have to check in with your babysitter. And like, I know you said your family has somebody who's feeling sick right now. Like that person's gonna be like, oh my gosh, thank you. How did you know I was going through stress? Like, oh, I didn't mean to overhear, but I know you were having a really tough phone call or just a moment ago. And I can just, you helped me last time, right? There's different ways how we can step. Maybe another time is that you notice that colleague who's in the meeting and they're kind of like hesitating. Call them out and say like, I think she has a really great point of view. Could she would you mind if you share your thoughts, what you shared with me earlier? Reach out for them. Like, all these small actions make a difference, but it starts with our noticing skills and observation skills. And so whether it's feeling like I don't know where to start with where you can, but then being that consistent in the rhythm. I think those two are key fundamentals that are crucial. And of course, the people you surround yourself. Hopefully you have more people who's also both noticing you, but also how you can replicate, because we become who we
Right.
are. The average of the 5 people we spend with is really crucial. So who are you spending most time with? So those are kind of some fundamentals that come to mind.
That's really good. Yeah, you say notice, and I might say be intentionally curious,
Curiosity is very important.
right? Like be curious. Yeah, like be curious about the life of
Mhm.
another. And I think what you said about first understanding and knowing yourself is incredibly important. And I'm sure that there's another story that you might have where you had to step up to understand like who you were a bit more. So do you have an example of that by chance?
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think I have always been a planner, and always been, you know, extreme planner to say it more accurately. Way back when, back in college and high school, I'm like
You know
teeth to
yourself.
the dot. 5 minutes this call, 10
Yeah,
minutes go here, 15 minutes go here, 30 minutes go here. Like, I remember even in grad school, like, I would have like a calendar that had like back to back meetings still. And like, I've gotten a lot better now, but it's a habit that creeps up. And I think
right.
it's my urge of like, I want to be time meaningful of this time. I want to spend intentional. But what I think uh, I've made the mistake is sometimes when you overplan, you don't create space for unexpectedness, for serendipity, for actually the joy of just seeing the flow. And what happened, this was back in college, and I still remember this lesson because it was kind of a wake up call. I got into this really amazing program in China, and I was really excited because as a Korean American, being able to study Korean, Chinese, English, I'm like, I got this Northeast Asian like affairs figured out. I'm gonna go to this, Columbia Chinese program that I got accepted to. I felt really excited. I was telling everyone throughout the whole semester I'm gonna be in China this summer. That kind of like school moment where you're like, yay, I earned it. And how silly of me, just a week before the program, and I was getting really excited, I realized I totally screwed up because I, yes, was accepted to the program, but I did not get the visa to go to China. And the reason why this is like unexpectedness for me is that I grew up also in South Korea where you don't actually need a visa to go to China, but as an American, you kind of do. And because I applied the program through being American, I forgot that I need to apply for a visa, which takes months, not a week. So I was totally screwed. And when I realized that, I was having a meltdown because all my pride, my planner brain, I felt so incompetent. I just felt like, what in the world? I can't even figure out this simple thing. And I just self doubt all the negative things I was kind of telling myself. And I literally remember, it's embarrassing to admit, but like literally crying and like kind of like feeling so frustrated because I didn't know what to do with it. And my parents finally walked into it. I was like, you know what? You have still 3 months of time. Just figure out and do something with it. And that was a wake up call because I realized actually you're right. I can't just be like complaining for 3 months. That also would be really miserable. Already doing that for 3 days was like horrible. So I took finally the courage of like, you know what? Let me just do first one thing, which is take advantage of what's something I can do in Korea. I started applying for part-time job. And I ended up finding this cool side gig opportunity where I was helping out VIPs coming to events, but they needed somebody who can speak English and Korean. So it was like a nice like part-time job. Thank God I did that because that's where I met my future boss and got the opportunity to work at the UN. Also great because now I earned a little bit of money to now be able to travel for the rest of the summer. And because I wanted to travel to different places, we got to go to Tibet, Egypt. And because I still had another month, I ended up being able to go back to China. In fact, when the Olympic was going on, so I actually got to study Chinese still, but the different program, not Columbia. Got to experience Beijing actually instead of Shanghai. And I realized walking out of that, you know what? I don't want to specialize in China because I want to focus on something else. So I walked away from that summer where I thought I was going to do one thing and I thought I failed because I didn't get the visa. And that push from my parents of just do something pushed me to realize I ended up doing three things that would have taken 3 summers, and one summer actually even more productive, going back to productivity. And a reminder of just like, you know what? It's a gift at times to have plan, and it's a gift also to let plans just gracefully navigate itself. And so plan for the unexpected has been like the life lesson I've carried on. And so I'm still an extensive planner, but now I also extensively plan for flexibility. And I think that has helped me be more grounded, at ease, and again, noticing skill to notice that, you know what, if I could now appreciate all these different things and hence, learn more things. So lesson.
Yeah, you've had to. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story because I don't empathize with you because I'm not a planner. I am totally opposite and I just go with the flow. And I've had to learn how to plan and to be better about making sure that I understand where I'm going so that I can be more targeted to get there. And leading my organization at Proact, it's I realize that my way of doing things stresses people out, and most people are cut like you. And so I've had to learn the opposite to understand that plans are very important, but you're right. It's okay to go with the flow sometimes. All right. So my next question for you then, Monica, then is like, how would you talked about your parents a bit in that last story. So how would your parents describe you as a child? Like, what was that like, growing up in South Korea and then making your way over here to the
Actually, it's
States?
opposite. I was born here, so I grew up here in the States, and then lived in South Korea for a little
Oh,
bit. But most of my life, I've been in the States.
I
And
see.
so, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
the thing that,
So how was your childhood
yeah,
like then?
one of the thing that has been consistent, and hence it is one of my key words, connecting back to noticing that you've said and how you translate the curiosity, is that I've always been a curious person. So even as a child, I would, I would, I still ask my parents to like, because I want to remember all the different stories, and I recommend others as well. Ask your parents or like elderlies like how you were younger, because those stories are going to be lost because they remember things, but you won't know until you ask. And so every time I see them, I'll ask, like, how was I as a kid? And they're like, you would ask these weird questions, Monica, or like you would say these interesting comments. I like remembering that because, especially in my down days, I try to remember, like, what's the most Monica like way of processing this or doing this, or me just being true to myself. And I remind myself it's when I'm being curious, it's when I'm being courageous, it's when I'm being creative. That's when I'm fully, really me. Since when I was like, before I was overshadowed by society's biases. Like that's who I was organically as a young child. And I don't want to ever forget that. So I was always curious.
That's good. And so, what kind of guides you and keeps you grounded right now, Monica? Like, our listeners are always looking for leaders to inform them of some guiding principles or values that you live by. And so, what keeps you grounded?
Uh, I don't know if this is a political, I guess not a political, but like for me, faith is actually really important. So faith in life actually keeps me grounded. I know,
We
okay,
can talk
I know
about
some
faith. Come
people,
on,
yeah, some
let's
people,
go.
yeah, some people talk more than others, but for me, that's actually been the root of everything that keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a marketplace person, so I don't always necessarily talk. I just like to show it in how I show up. But other than faith, for those
Sure.
who are looking for other things, I think also the values of curiosity, creativity, courage has really been important for me because, you know, the pandemic has taught us a reminder that, going back to the planner or no planner, like nothing ever goes the way we ever anticipate. And it's both feels scary, but also a blessing because how boring would life be if we already knew everything that's going to happen? You know, when you're going to get married, you know, when you're going to have kids, you know, what business you're going to do, you know, what's not going to work. It's not going to be fun at all, honestly. And I think that would be very, very boring. And as scary as it is to feel like we don't know what we don't know, we don't know how this recession's going to hit. We don't know how, a lot of people have been going through very scary job transitions and, unfortunately, because of the tech industry as well. But I think part of the grace is that, but hopefully you remember who you are. And the biggest gift is that, you being fully yourself. And that's what the world also needs. And so while we have those down times, while we have days we don't know what we don't know, where do we start with what we do know, which is hopefully you keep getting deeper and being a better version of who you are, how you show up and serve others. And I think that's where the people matters, right? The people you surround yourself, what you read, what you consume. I love reading. So for me, like reading and being inspired inspires me to know that, there's diverse ways of how you do things. That's why diversity of thought is really important. I try to read different types of books, listen to different types of podcasts like this podcast and other podcasts. Try to experience different things, right? Like don't go to the same event that you already know everyone. Go to different events. Maybe you're the only person who only looks like you. Just see how it feels. Yes, it might not feel fun to be excluded a little bit, but like we won't know who else might be there. I met so many new friends by purposely going to places where I didn't know anyone, because you really have to force yourself to talk and make friends. And so I think those few things remind me each day that I'm just building the block one block at a time. And it's okay sometimes when we don't know what everything is going to be.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Monica. And you gave some really good advice for us to live by. And I love your three C's: curiosity, creativity, and courage. I think that's a really good summation of everything that you stand for and who you are. And so as we close, like you're a reader, and so what's one good quote that our listeners can really take with them after hearing you talk today?
One quote from where? From a book that I read?
From a book, yes, exactly, because you've sent
Yes.
me a lot of books, and I read Culture Code, which is one of the most recent books you've sent me. And I love that book, and it talks about the
Yeah.
importance of informing culture with these
Hmm.
isms. So our team says Darrenisms, and your team might say Monica-isms, but they say that's just one way to live up and keep the oxygen in the organization
Yeah.
or company alive, if you will. And so with that being said, what's one quote that really resonates with you that our listeners can walk away with you that you picked up in a book or some reading or even your own book?
Yeah. Actually, I
Shameless
know.
plug.
Yes, I will have a bunch from my book, but actually, two things I do want to share is I have it actually in my wall here because I have a little quote wall because I want to remember these phrases. I forget where I got this, but I love this phrase, and I wrote this down, which basically this person said, anything you do is how everything you'll do. Exactly. Anything you'll do is how
Explain. Unpack that.
because
Unpack that. I'm writing
we
this down myself.
underestimate. Let me make sure I'm like reading it correctly. Right? It's like, oh, how you do anything. How you do anything is how you do everything.
That's powerful. Yeah. So what does that mean
For
to
me,
you?
it's a reminder to walk with intention and how I want to show up in anything I do. Because it's not just in the office. It's not just in this podcast. It's not just like when you're meeting your client. It's like when you're taking a walk, when you're meeting the stranger in the elevator, when you're saying hello, when you're standing in line, when you're about to get your ticket to the train. Like all these small moments in life is actually an interaction with another person. Like I try to now be more intentional of how when I interact with people, no matter whether I know them well or if it's a complete stranger. And it just makes a world difference. I mean, I'm sure plenty of all of us have moments where like we had just such a pleasant conversation with a stranger and it just made our day, right? We probably made each other's day. And it's about like small things. Anything,
Mhm.
how we do
Yeah.
anything is how we do everything. I want to hopefully be somebody I will continue to live with my values fully, not just like during the 9 to 5 or the structured timeline. So that's one quote I want to share because I think the simplicity is really powerful.
Right.
The second thing is,
That is it's showing up as a.
second
Yeah,
thing
go
is
ahead.
one of my other favorite book of my lifetime. I read over and over again. I collect in different languages. It's from The Little Prince, and I'm blinking on the accurate phrase, but it's basically along the line of like, what's most important is invisible to the eye. And that phrase is always a powerful reminder that just because you don't physically see it with your eye does not mean that it's not there. And this goes back to, right, all the values, everything that we're talking about, the feelings that people feel as they're listening to our conversation. It might look not visible, but it's real, it's tangible. And I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss noticing those details and treasuring that. So I've started recently a gratitude journal for the past actually month and a half, and it's been really, really powerful to increase my noticing and gratitude skills of the small to the big details
Hmm.
in life. And so, in fact, has made me happier because I'm noticing.
What's a gratitude
Oh,
journal?
gratitude journal. I mean, like, there's so many. This is one for example.
What is that?
Um, it basically has these columns of
Okay.
like writing affirmation every day, just one page. Very simple. You start 5 minutes in the morning, first thing in the morning, of like write down 3 things you're grateful for. What would make great today in your daily affirmation of I am. And then at the end of the night before you go to bed, 3 amazing things that happened today and how would I have made today even better.
Beautiful. And that is, you are such a powerful
Thank
woman, and
you.
I'm so glad to spend some time with you today, Monica. And I just appreciate your time, your energy, and your authenticity here today.
Thank you. Vice versa.
So, Monica, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let me ask you, who stood in the gap for you? What are the words that changed your life? If you can answer that question, then I want you on the show. Send me a message at Derrin@proactindy.org. That's Derrin, Derrin, at proactindy.org.